Thank you already to those of you who are writing in the chat and telling us who you are and where you're from. I see from names that I recognize and from what you've written that we have a truly diverse and international crowd, ranging from people who live in the old city of Jerusalem and know firsthand some of the things about which we'll be speaking, to people in Europe and across North America, and there may be more than that than even I see. I'm particularly excited tonight, and I'm prompted to begin by saying, how is this webinar different from all other webinars of the Rossing Center? For in all other webinars, we invite outside guests to speak, sometimes alongside Rossing staff members. On this webinar, all of the speakers will be from the Rossing staff, something which gives me great pleasure to be here with my colleagues and friends. So good evening, and now we can begin. For those who don't know or don't remember, the Rossing Center, the Rossing Center for Education and Dialogue, located in Jerusalem, is an organization dedicated to shared society building using our tools of interreligious relations. The Rossing Center grew from its beginnings about 20 years ago as the Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations. And it's in fact that department, which is now one of half a dozen departments at the Rossing Center, which is responsible for the work that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we're really going back to our roots and to some of the issues that I think animated our founder, Daniel Rossing, who would certainly love to be with us tonight, and I think he'd be very happy with what we're doing tonight. And I'm happy to mention Daniel. You know that you've joined us this evening for a discussion that has two parts. It's titled Christian Communities at a Crossroads, and we use that title because we're going to be talking about two different things. One is our second annual report about the harassment of Christians in Israel and East Jerusalem. And the second is something new we haven't done before. It's the first survey which we have done amongst Christians of Israel and Christians of Israel and attitudes in the Christian community towards pressing and crucial issues of today. And so those are the two foci of what we're going to be discussing. If you've joined us, you know that some of the things we'll be talking about are not happy. We're certainly happy and even proud to be doing what we're doing, but we're certainly unhappy that the things which our reports document and the questions that we have to ask and the topics that we talk about are not happy topics. The harassment of Christians in the Jewish state is a stain on the fabric of that state. It is something that we as Jews, had this been going on to Jews living as a minority anywhere else in the world, the Jewish community would be up in arms about spitting or defacing or graffiti or attacks or whatever it may be. And the essence of the founding of JCJCR, the Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations, goes back to Daniel's insight that A, Israel was the only place where there wasn't a council of Christians and Jews, and B, that Israel was unique, not because it lacked the council of Christians and Jews, but because it was the only place in the globe where Jews were the majority and Christians were the minority. And that inverse relationship, the opposite of what we're accustomed to everywhere else on the globe, gives the Jewish people some special responsibility. And it's in great measure that we take up that responsibility by adopting, as the Rossing Center, these topics and designating JCJCR to create the report now in its second year, and for the first time, the survey of the attitudes of Christian communities. We launched the report and the survey on Thursday, 4 days ago. with a small press conference. It's already been covered by the press to some extent, and I know that at least one outlet has done a podcast, a video podcast, and there have been over 2,000 views. So apparently we're dealing with something which is of great interest. We're glad that you've joined us this evening, and I hope that you'll tell others about what you hear tonight. What we're doing is being recorded, and I want to thank Gil in the background for pushing that button and making everything work. That and much, much, much more. And you can access the recording and you can share it with others afterwards. Now let me just introduce by name the three staff members who are with us and ask each of you to tell us in a sentence or two or three what you do, and then we'll jump right into the program. Fede, can I begin with you? Federica Sasso. Remember to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Yes, done. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight or this afternoon, depending on which time zone you are located. I am a project coordinator. I work for JCJCR, which is the project that Ophir just introduced. And I coordinate the monitoring of attacks and also what we call the Education and Advocacy Initiative, which is like a branch off of JCJCR dealing exactly with this issue of hostilities of Christians.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Fede. And before I go on to Hossam, I do want to just mention, I should have said this at the beginning, Eid Mubarak, a happy Eid al-Fitr to any Muslims who be with us this evening. And with that said, and I'm glad it is, Hossam.
Good evening. Thank you all. Thank you, Ophir. My name is Hossam Elias. I work for Rosing Center with the department which is called JCJCR with my colleague Hannah and Fede and others. And I will present some of the main findings of the survey regarding local Christians in Israel and East Jerusalem in a couple of minutes.
Okay, and what do you do? What do you normally do at the Rosing Center, Hossam?
Yes, I'm part of the JCJCR. Mainly, we work to enhance Jewish-Christian relations, and we, among other things, we concentrate or we focus on the challenges and reality facing Arab or Palestinian Christians in Israel and East Jerusalem.
Okay, thank you, Hossam. And Hannah.
Hi, good evening. I'm happy to be here, see many friends and familiar faces from all over the world. So I am working for the responsible for the Jerusalem Center for Jewish-Christian Relations, which is part of the Rosing Center, mainly involved in educational work, teaching Israeli Jews about Christianity in the Holy Land and Jewish-Christian relations in the context of the Holy Land and the State of Israel.
All right, terrific. So now you know from whom you'll be hearing, and let's turn first to Fede to get us started. All right? Thank you, Fede.
Thank you, Ophir. So I would like to start. I will try to frame the, what these documents that we're introducing to you, like the 2024 annual report dedicated to monitoring hostilities and analyzing this phenomena, this rising phenomena within the sociopolitical situation, and also the survey, because we added a survey. We will introduce it in a minute. So I want to start this introduction with a couple of stories briefly. The first is, it's coming from a conversation that I had with an Armenian monk living in the Armenian quarter of the old city here in Jerusalem. And we were sitting and talking, and he shared with me that one of the things that he used to do, he's done for years, was taking a walk around the old city, quite usually. But in the last months, like especially in the last months of 2024, The situation has been, we will explain that there is a rise in hostilities, and that's also why we started monitoring attacks. But especially during 2024, he perceived that there was a further enhancement of, a heating up of the situation. And this peaceful routine of his, of taking a walk, has become something stressful, because now he, and not only himself, but other brothers from, the monastery, and actually clergy from all denominations that live or work in the old city, face the real threat of being harassed basically every time they walk around the old city, either being spat at or being verbally harassed or experiencing some sort of hostile attitude. And another little story that I collected in the last weeks is coming from a Catholic nun who called me Saturday afternoon, and she was agitated. She called me on the spot, saying that a few minutes before, two Orthodox Jewish men in their 30s were walking behind her. She was coming from Damascus Gate, just outside the old city, and they realized she was a nun, and so they started cursing the name of Jesus in English. And so she waited a second, and then she decided to confront them, and she asked why they would engage in such behavior. Why doing this, which is so offensive? And instead of giving an answer or interacting with her, which sometimes happens, attackers, when they're confronted, sometimes they do engage in a conversation. But in this case, they raised their voices and they continued until she decided to take out her phone and try to film them. But at that point, they just ran away. So these two little stories are part of a larger problem, and we could give you many, many more examples. And it is because we saw a steep rise in these types of harassment, especially starting in 2023, that in the context of JCJCR, we decided to launch what we call the Advocacy and Education Initiative. And Hannah can tell you later that the issue of spitting is not new. It's really not new at all. Foreign clergy who's been living in the old city and in Jerusalem for decades can say that even 30 years ago, this was already an issue. But in the last years, the rise in hostility has risen steeply. This is an unparalleled frequency, the intensity and the severity of these incidents has increased tremendously. So in our report during 2024, we documented 111 attacks, a number that is slightly higher than what we were able to document in 2023. And here I really want to acknowledge Mrs. Iska Harani, who is the founder of the Religious Freedom of Information Center. She's our partner. Her tireless work, she tackled this issue. And we decided to partner with her because we felt that joining forces was the best way. And she created this platform and can count on many, many volunteers that she trained. And thanks to Iska and thanks to her volunteer, the work of the data gathering has been possible. And thanks to their effort, we were able to expand and widen the outreach to many, many more communities. And we hope to continue expanding, working together. However, despite the numbers that we could monitor together with Iska and volunteers, we want to stress that the figures that we collected, the incidents we collected, reflect only a very small fraction of what is happening on the ground. We have recorded property attacks, physical assaults, verbal harassment, and we want to stress that even if these seem like maybe small events sometimes, the accumulation of these indignities, it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. It's humiliating. And this makes Christians feeling unwelcome in a space that they have inhabited for centuries, for millennia, actually. As has been documented, the local Christian communities has been shrinking for years. And now we see that a combination of growing hostilities and increasingly polarized sociopolitical climate and the effect of the brutal war that is raging is putting the Christian communities, especially the local Christian communities, in perhaps the most vulnerable position they have faced in a long time. The rise in harassment is actually part of a broader and more subtle erosion of the symbolic and the physical space that Christians have been occupying for centuries. And to better understand what is happening, what are the challenges that Christians are facing, we decided to conduct a survey. We did this in December 2024, and Hussam will speak about this in a minute. And the idea was to gather insights and to understand directly from Christians in Israel and in East Jerusalem, what are their perceptions and attitudes and what are their needs. I just want to add just a few words to say that we at the Racing Center, we're perfectly aware that this is an extremely challenging time. And there's a lot of violence taking place in our region. And we understand that it might be very difficult to focus on issues of spitting and of verbal harassment and maybe even freedom of religion when there is such a war raging and we are witnessing everything that you can read in the news. But these political developments, we feel that are not separate from the issues that Christians are facing. And we believe that it's important to keep the focus also on these specific challenges, especially at the time, a few weeks just before Easter, and when Christians will be celebrating Easter also at the same time that the Jewish population will be celebrating Pesach. So this will be also a very heating time here in our region. And so we think that what happens in Jerusalem reverberates across the world. That a decisive stance on interreligious relations here can serve as a model for other regions around the world that are facing similar types of conflicts. And so we hope that enhancing knowledge and sharing what the challenges are, maybe we can contribute to end this cycle of violence or to contribute to mend it, at least. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Fede. Thank you for making some connections between these two documents, the report and the survey, and for giving us a general framing of our whole program this evening, this afternoon, this morning, as it may be. I want to mention that both of these documents will be available to you. The survey is already on our website, and the report will be up there quite soon. So you'll be able to access them. Both by going to our website and at the very end of tonight's program, we'll put up some QR codes so you can scan them with your phone if that's a convenient way to get directly to where the reports are or will be. We're not doing this only for the purpose of documentation. We have an educational and actionable agenda as well. And so the statistics are important, but they're a means to an end. I know that over the years, I've heard people say that things have gotten a little bit better, the attacks are a little bit worse than they used to be. We're not going to document things with the precision of being able to make terribly definitive statements, but the accumulation of the data will nonetheless be able to serve other important purposes. And maybe this is a great opportunity to say that I'm really happy that we have a member of the Israeli police force with us this evening. Johnny, thank you for being here. We're glad that you are, and we're glad for what you do. Okay, Hannah, please tell us about the 2024 report.
Okay, so I'm not going to save you from reading the full report, or at least the executive summary. I would like to mention a couple of aspects of the report. As you know, this is the second year that we following the incidents and we're writing a report. The whole initiative started with a hunch that we had that something is getting worse, and then we started to collect the data. And Federica mentioned the Religious Freedom Data Center, where we collect together with Iskahani and other volunteers the data. But the question is, what do we do with the data? And I have to admit that numbers and data is not enough in this stage, because it's definitely just scratching the surface. We don't have the information about all the incidents, and not even a small percentage of them. There's no doubt that there are many things that happen and we don't know about them. So it's hard to say something about the numbers. There's no perspective, and it's a long-term project. So after, I don't know, 5-10 years, we will be able to say something about the numbers. I do want to talk about tendencies, and I want to talk about climate and about changes and what special things we've noticed in the last year with the very difficult circumstances. So first of all, there's no doubt that the political and social climate influencing also the reality of Christians here, like everyone else. But in the context of what we are doing, we see that there is more extreme and extremism and polarization within the society, negative, in many cases, negative attitude, or ignoring minorities, lack of interest in minorities. I guess everyone who lives here or follow the news, we hear a lot about lack of tolerance and more nationalism. And personally, I feel there's more aggressiveness even in the street when I drive my car or when I try to stand in line. But obviously also in the wider perspective. And even if Hussam will talk about the challenges of the Arab Palestinian society in the north, and one of the challenges there is also the criminal organization that also have a strong impact on the life of Christians as well, but also Muslim. So there's a bit of atmosphere that there is legitimacy for violence, or at least there's more place for violent people to express the violence, and that's very difficult. And also there's more fear to react. There's fear to react to violence because violence leads to more violence, or fear from stereotype, or fear from covering or talking about the violence. We see less covering of incident that's related to Christians, and less leaders who condemn the incident. So these are the things that we've noticed this year. And I'm not going to repeat the analysis we did about who are the people who do that and what's the background. I'll just say generally that we find that most of the people who attack Christians or harass Christians or spit on Christians from religious background usually come from the religious communities. And we don't want, of course, to stain all the Israelis, all the Jews, all the religious people, but we do see that it comes with certain religious background that helps us to identify the problems, and maybe later on I will talk about solutions. What kind of changes have we seen? So first of all, we see increase in the reports, more willingness of the churches, of members of the clergy, to collaborate, to share information, to inform us, the volunteers, Iska, about the incident, to file a complaint at the police, either by themselves or they ask us to do that. Not all of them. Some of them hesitate to go to the police by themselves. Some of them hesitate to publish their name as being attacked, but they're more happy to, or ready to collaborate, or willing to collaborate with us, and to allow us to, first of all, to inform us about the incident, but also sometimes to file a complaint to the police. We also hear that there are more serious incidents of vandalism, as the small building near Mount Beatitude that some people took over, verbal harassment, the harassment in the attack in the Armenian restaurant near Jaffa Gate that took place in July, when people just entered and attacked the tourists who were sitting there. We have more incidents outside Jerusalem. Again, we are more reported about it. Some of the things happened in the past, some of the things are new, but There you go. But it seems that there are more incidents in that are more Thank you. There are more incidents that are problematic incidents outside Jerusalem. For example, there were incidents near the Sea of Galilee, in Migdal Emek, and the latest in Fasuta. This year we heard more about general problems that connected to the relationship with the authorities. For example, visas issued. There are more problems with issuing visas for clergy. There were problems in the past, but they repeat this year. The whole issue of Arnona, which is now again on the table, an issue that related to local taxes that the churches were hoping that will be solved in the dialogue between the State of Israel and the Vatican, and they will get to a final agreement that would include a discussion about the local taxes. But meanwhile, although the agreement has not been finalized, already the municipalities issue procedures to charge the money from the churches, and there's a feeling of lack of transparency and lack of understanding how things are moving forward. There's more difficulties with coordinating with the authorities on general big religious events. And of course, we're talking about huge events that include major risks and security risk and safety risk, like Holy Fire, Holy Light ceremony that would take place in 3 weeks, or Mount Transfiguration celebration, the Feast of Transfiguration, and Mount Tabor. Of course, there's a need to coordinate it with the authorities, with the police, with the fire department. But the feeling of the churches reflect a feeling that share a feeling that there's not enough dialogue with them, and there's not enough understanding of their needs. For them, it's a ritual, it's a religious service that's taking place for centuries in the same place, and suddenly there are new restrictions. There's not enough coordination or not enough understanding from the police side, and they feel that the priority of the authorities are quite different from their priorities. So it's not that the authorities don't care, but it's just not being done in a proper dialogue in the way that the authorities also understand the needs of the churches. In this report, we decided to put some focus to have on Mount Zion as a case study. We followed the situation on Mount Zion for quite some time. Mount Zion is an old part of the old city, which is outside today's wall, but it has the remnants of a church from the 4th and then 12th century, and the building that include the Room of the Last Supper and Pentecost and the Tomb of King David. And by being a place that is holy to 3 religions and change and switch hands throughout the history, now it's under the responsibility of the State of Israel, and the lower part is the Tomb of King David, run by the Holy Places authorities, and the second part by the Ministry of Interior, because it's a Christian place visited by Christian, the Room of the Last Supper. It's a very complicated place with a complicated history and complicated reality, and there we're working together with other organizations, including the Jerusalem Intercultural Center and the project Window to Mount Zion, trying to follow up what's happening there. We've noticed that there's a lot of there's the place is not being taken care of properly. There's no one who's actually responsible. It's a Rebbe of the Western Wall who's supposed to be responsible for the site, but actually he's busy with the wall, and therefore in this vacuum, very negative elements enter the area. Some of them are quite dangerous, and they harm the site and the visitors. A lot of marginalized youth walking around, homelessness, and people that sometimes attack the property and the visitors. Me personally, in the last couple of weeks, suffered from a couple of verbal attacks by people who live there, studying the yeshiva there, who were shouting at us because I was explaining about Christianity to my group, and shouting at one of my students who was a Christian from the Galilee who was wearing a cross. But this is not something new. The Room of the Last Supper that was closed for almost half a year, almost a year since the beginning of the war, because of lack of human resources. They didn't have a person to open it. It's supposed to be a security guard from the Ministry of Interiors. Only after involvement of people in the Ministry of Interior, they allowed its opening again, and we're now following the situation there and making sure that it would stay open. And also we've noticed that initiative of people who are in charge of the tomb of King David was to close the room of the Last Supper for visitors, doing big Jewish events with the fear that problematic people would interfere the Christian who come to pray in the room of the Last Supper. We addressed the ministry and said that it doesn't make sense that because there are problematic Jewish people coming to a Jewish celebration would cause the closing of a Christian place where Christian cannot visit, and obviously they don't disturb anyone. I would like also to mention that the Ministry of Interior, after over a year, also fixed some glass windows that were destroyed and damaged by a few of these homelesses 2 years ago. So it was fixed by the Ministry of Interior, and we appreciate that. Couple of positive things that we've noticed this year and in the beginning of 2025. First of all, during the year, we addressed people in the municipality, couple of council members and advisors in the municipality, and they show a lot of interest to help and to support the work that we do and get involved in that. We're in contact with the police, and since there were many complaints to the police, and the police realized the importance of dealing with this problem, so we also noticed that in the last couple of months, the police initiated arrest of people who spat on Christian sites during Jewish celebration, and they not only arrest them, but they also publish it. And this is very important because it brings a message of interest of the police and the care that the police take in the well-being of the Christian. It's deterrent for people who think that they would be able to spit or to harass Christian and that would just pass without any punishment. It's good for the churches to notice that the police care, and it's good also for the cause of promoting improvement of the situation of Christians here. And they also use the resources they have. They also use the cameras. There's a big project of cameras all over the city, and actually even if you just report to the police, they can follow in the cameras and check who's the person who attacked the Christian, and then they can arrest him. And they started to do that, and we appreciate the police for doing that. We also, as I said, very we are optimistic by the willingness of the churches to collaborate and help and report the incidents. And we also see a lot of interest from diplomats and communities around the world, and including many people who sit in this webinar, who are ready to include this topic in their agenda, although there are other issues around us, very complicated reality, but still not to forget this issue and continue gaining awareness to the issue. We also see a lot of support from the wide majority of the Israeli Jews, as we see the attacks taking place in specific places, but by, of course, a minority of people. But as we said, the damage to the Christian community is much wider, and we will talk about it when Hussam will present the survey. But when we talk to people, the vast majority, the silent majority, they all show a willingness to help, to support, to volunteer, to get involved. They all feel very bad for this reality, and they all understand that it's necessary to change it. Just to conclude, I would say that I would like to invite those of you who are in Jerusalem or in the Holy Land in the next 2 weeks, and they come to the Old City to celebrate either Pesach or Easter. You know, it's going to fall on this Holy Week and Passover the same week. And we expect that there might going to be incident. If you are there, open your eyes. Please report in our website. You have the link to the database where we collect information, or just inform us or any of the volunteers that you know, so we would be able to add it to the database. And I do hope that in the next few years, when we will go and I will invite people to walk around Jerusalem, they would walk around, but there would be nothing to report about.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for presenting difficult things in a way where we can listen to them. I'm full of questions of my own, and I've been sent quite a few as well, but we're not going to go there immediately. We're going to move on. But when I hear you speaking, Hannah, I'm just full of memories of my own. We heard from Feda, we heard from Hannah that these are phenomena that have been going on for many, many, many years. I actually checked the date and saw that almost to the date, this week, 2 years ago, I published a blog post about the desecration of the Protestant cemetery on Mount Zion that Hannah has just spoken about. And the link is in the chat. You're welcome to have a look at that. That's 2 years ago. 1 year ago, we did the report. Now we've done the second report. And I can't resist the opportunity to share one other anecdote. I've lost the text of this judgment from the court, but this is the essence of the story. And if anyone has the text, please send it to me. There was an Armenian seminarian who was spat at by a Jewish hooligan. And that Armenian, if I'm not mistaken, was a Canadian Armenian who had been a football player. So he was a rather physical lad, and he actually beat the assailant. Nothing here was anonymous, so this went to court. And spitting and punching, there is a difference between the two, but the judgment which the judge gave included a phrase to the essence of which was, you shouldn't have done it, but the state of Israel was not created to take revenge for the suffering of the Jewish people over the last 2,000 years. That's just not okay. And the punishment was trivial, sort of like Leon Uris's QB7. So it's important that we have people who know right from wrong, and it's important that people report the wrongs. And with Easter, both Eastern and Western Easter coming on the tail of Passover this year, this is going to be a very, very sensitive time. Thank you for mentioning that and inviting people to be active in the project, Hannah. All right, Hussam, can we go over to you?
Yes, good evening once again. First of all, I want to share with you the context of the survey that was done on December 24. And I will start that if anyone want to understand the reality of local Arab or Palestinian Christians in Israel and in East Jerusalem, we need to know that, or to recognize that Arab Christians are a double minority, which means that at the same time, they are a national minority as Arabs or Palestinians, and at the same time, as belonging to a religious minority within the national minority. So it's a double minority. The Middle Eastern climate and violence against Christian communities in the Middle East, resulting from the Arab Spring and due to internal events, that part of them was mentioned in the previous presentation, against Christians in villages and cities in Israel, have influenced and continue to influence the process, first of all, of defining the identity of Christians in Israel, and among other things. The changing socio-political reality in Israel, raising a lot of dilemmas and questions regarding their future, staying versus immigration, issues of identity crisis, or people went far and they are speaking now. It's not related directly to the survey, but they are speaking about a threatened identity, marginality, and personal safety. The war in Gaza and the war with Lebanon increased the anxiety and fears among Arab Christians and their ability to cope with the changing reality of political extremism, rapid social changes, and violence, with the absence of a future horizon and peaceful horizon. The reality of Christians in East Jerusalem is even much more complicated. Palestinian Christians in East Jerusalem face many challenges related to their civic status, which are related to Israeli occupation, restrictions on movement, limited access to land, housing, and resources, and the complex bureaucratic requirements for residency and permit, which deepen their crisis and their ability to develop economically and socially as a community, thus increasing the tendency of the young generation to immigrate to seek better economic and social opportunities. Lately, several polls, surveys, and academic researches purely on Christians in Israel and East Jerusalem are being done or were done. The repeated results across the different surveys suggest growing and increasing trends among Arab Christians related to identity crisis, inequality, a complicated relation with the state, and the need to influence the relations with local churches or to enhance relation with local churches. I will just give you a short review, which will include some statistics regarding Arab or local Christians in Israel. About 130 Arab Christians live in Israel and East Jerusalem. Most of the Arab Christians reside in the Northern District. More than 70% of Arab or local Christians live in the Galilee area or in the northern parts of Israel, and in Haifa district, where we have there about 14% of the Christians are living in Haifa district. The localities with the largest Arab Christian populations are Nazareth with about 21,000, Haifa with about 17, a bit less, and Jerusalem with about 13,000 inhabitants, and Shfa'amer with about 10.5 thousand. The number of children per Arab Christian woman was lower still, and it's about 1.62 children per woman, which is the mean that the fertility rate for Christian women are the lowest in Israel compared to Jews, Muslims, and others. more than 84% of Christian 12th grade students were eligible for a matriculation certificate. 55% of the Arab Christians continued their studies toward a first degree within 8 years of graduating high school, compared to only 34.6% of the total number of high school graduates in the Arab school system and 48% in the Hebrew education system. The great majority, another interesting statistic, that the great majority of Arab Christian school students, more than 70%, studies at Christian schools or church-related schools, thus creating some kind of a segregation between them and between other communities. In terms of methodology that was adapted, as I said, that the survey was conducted in December 24. The database preparation process was carefully done to ensure that the study sample represent the target group. The sample was randomly selected. The survey first identifies the key demographic groups that make up the Christians in the Arab population in Israel and East Jerusalem. These groups include age, gender, geographic location, identity, and church affiliation. The survey consisted of a questionnaire of 29 questions throughout telephone interviews. The sample included 300 Christians from Galilee, from central Israel, from East Jerusalem, and from Haifa, and and it was divided into males and females as represented in the total population. Now I will share you some main findings. First of all, we had a lot of findings that we cannot count, we cannot present, but you can see in the report. But I picked up or chose some basic, or let's say not basic, but at least main findings that might be interesting to be introduced. In terms of acceptance by Jews, 31% of Christians feel they are not accepted within the whole aggregate. But if we come to the younger people, from the age of 18 to 29, we are speaking about 56% of those youngsters who feel unaccepted. That means that there is an ongoing polarization within the Israeli society, with this dramatic gap between youngsters, 56%, compared to adults with about 30%, almost double the percentage. If we want to speak about feeling of distrust, almost half, 74% of respondents felt that Israeli Jews are fearful or distrustful of Palestinian Arabic Christians, while only 21 disagree with this statement. So there is kind of mistrust, ongoing, increasing mistrust. In terms of relation with the state, the nation-state law viewed very negatively by Christians. They viewed negatively by most respondents, and about 65% of the respondents confirms with the nation-state law that they are now a second class citizens compared to Jews. So the nation-state law decreased the status of the Palestinian population, including the Christians, as equal citizens within the state. In terms of willingness to serve in the army, while 84% would not agree for their kids to do national service in Israel. We differentiate, we ask about national service and military service. Opposition to army service is stronger, with about 71% of respondents saying they would not agree for their kids to serve in the army. If we look oppositely to this percentage, we can find that about 18% of agrees for their children to serve in the army, in the Israeli army, which compared to previous surveys, there is an increase, a notable increase in the willingness to send their kids to the army. In terms of immigration, and here the finding is really, as Ophir said, they're really unhappy findings. A significant portion, about 37%, more than 1/3 of the respondents are considering immigration. It's in the whole aggregate. But if we check the younger age group between 18 to 44, we find that there is about 50%, half of those target groups between 18 and 44 who considering leaving the country and immigrate. So there is a gap between youngsters and adults. So here also the percentage is increasing. And the reasons for leaving, there were 3 reasons for leaving or for considering or tending to immigrate. The first one is 44% declared that for security reasons, and also it includes the violence within or intra-Arab community or within the Arab community. And the socio-political situation, 33% from the respondents said that the lack of socio-political horizon is one of the factors that increase their tendency or willingness to immigrate. But at the same time, they say that there are few reasons that will keep them here or will keep them for staying, which is the family ties, 52%, and religious connection to the land or to the Holy Land, 24%. So we have some kind of reasons that encourage people to immigrate versus reasons or factors pulling those youngsters and adults to stay here. But they also suggest, in terms of relation with the church, that the church also can do a few things in order to maintain Christian presence and decrease the tendency of those Christians to immigrate. First of all, is by providing housing. The second reason is offering job opportunities. And the third is protecting church properties and lands. The last thing that I want to share with you is when we ask about identity, the survey tracked two dimensions of perceived identity: religious and ethnic or ethno-religious identity. Respondents could include both dimensions or identity with only one of them. And it was really noticeable that 77% among other, when they were asked about their identity, they stressed 77% considered as Christianity, not religious wise, but as the feeling of belonging, as a kind that you define or identify with the broader Christian community. They declared that they are Christians. So 77% of those who were asked identified as Christians. Part of them identified as Arab Christian or as Israeli Christian or as Palestinian Christians or purely as Christians. But what is common between all those respondents, common from about 77% of those respondents, they identify as Christians together with other different national or civic or let's say ethnic identity. Thank you for listening.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Hussam, for presenting difficult statistics in a meaningful and interesting way. Maybe I should mention that we're grateful also to have had the support and advice and consultation of Professor Bernard Sabella from Bethlehem University, a sociologist, himself a Christian, who helped in the design of the survey and participated in the report's presentation last week. Again, thank you, Hussam. Before we go over to Q&A, and I welcome you to send your questions if you have, or if you haven't already, I want to mention that we at the Rossing Center are trying to do a monthly webinar. Next month, we think that the topic will be the interrelated nature of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. So we'll be going from a Christian-centered topic to something dealing with Judaism and Christianity next month. Our monthly webinars take significant resources to produce and make available. And we invite those of you who are able and interested to support our work to make these webinars and the other things that the Rossing Center does possible. So there's a donation link available in the chat and, of course, on our website as well. And we'd be very happy if you would visit it and act accordingly. So thank you. Before the questions I have and those that are coming in, do any of the panelists have something they want to say to one another? Hannah Fede?
No, I think that there's a lot of correlation between the findings of the survey and the reality we see through the report. I think the feeling that, as for some said, you're a minority within a minority, the way people define their identity, putting emphasis not only on the national aspect but also on the religious aspect. I think it's something that we also witness in our work, and we haven't mentioned the mantra that we started to use last year, the squeeze and the smash incidents, and we said that there are smash incidents, there are big incidents like the desecration of the cemetery in Mount Zion 2 years ago, or the attack on the Armenian restaurant I've mentioned again, or the attack on the statue in Fasuta. These are big events that help the community, you know, to get attention, to work together, to improve it. It's kind of strengthening the community in a way, although obviously it's very difficult thing to experience. But the little squeeze incidents, this spitting and harassment and verbal harassment and problem to get the visa and problem to get this permission, and sometimes it's only for the clergy. And as we saw from the survey, the lay people maybe don't feel harassed. I mean, they're like over 80%, 88% said that they were never harassed, more in Jerusalem, but in the north, in the Galilee, said the average is 88% said they were never harassed because of their faith, because they had a religious symbol. But the fact that you're clergy and you know that your clergy is being harassed because of their faith, that's also influenced you as a layperson. So we see how the incidents of attacks and harassment also have impact on the lay people, on the parishioners. And I would even say that unfortunately we already hear from outside of the country that people ask before, you know, they plan, no one is, you know, people have future plan to come to visit Jerusalem or to visit Israel, and they wonder what's going on here. Is it a place where Christian will not feel comfortable to present their faith with different Christian symbols? So the impact of the incidents, although small incidents, they have impact on the community of the lay people, and obviously they're the way to perceive their future.
Thank you, Hannah. So Hannah, a question to you. You mentioned that there is that we seem to have found a greater willingness to report this year than last year. To what do you attribute that greater increased willingness?
So I think for many years the churches would kind of wipe up that problem and said, well, then no one would do anything about it, and there's no point to report and nothing would happen. I think now they see that more people take it seriously, people care, volunteers, different organization, the authorities, they pay attention. Again, not as much as we want, but they feel that maybe there is hope. I think all of us who are involved in this managed to gain the trust that we actually want the good and the well-being of the Christian, and it's important for us, and we take responsibility. As you said in your opening, it's part of our responsibility, and when they see that there are Israeli Jews who takes that as their responsibility to protect the minorities here, I think they appreciate that. And I think there are more people that are there to communicate, to meet with them, to call once a month and to ask if there are any problems. And I think it all adds to the willingness to help. Still, again, many would hesitate to do it by themselves. It's more complicated if you're not a citizen. They would worry about, if someone would not like it, and it would be a problem later on with, I don't know, renewing the visa or any other activity. But we are there to help. Maybe Fede has other perspective on that.
Fede?
I think Hannah nailed it, sort of. I would just add that I think that the fact that especially foreign Christians feel that they're seen is really increasing the sense of trust, also vis-a-vis us, not only towards the authorities. And I just want to add that this is a complex issue, not only because of minority within minority, because these issues intersect the conflict, but also because there's a distinction that we kind of took for granted, maybe even in our presentation, but there's the presence of Christians here is really multifaceted. We have the two big groups, the local Christians and the foreign Christians, but some of the foreign Christians have been here for decades, and so they're locals. And we have migrant workers who are locals in some way because their kids were born here, but they're Christians. There are many, many different identities that come under the common denominator of being Christians. And each one of these communities, even between the different churches, like the diversity that we can find here with the different denominations is way wider than I'm Italian, so I'm thinking of my own Italian identity, my landscape, the European landscape a little bit more. But here we have everything coming together. And we need to take into consideration all of the needs, all of the differences. And the work we're trying to do tries to be a sort of advocacy vis-a-vis all of these communities with their different needs. So I think that also the possibility for foreign clergy to be seen, for example, is a certain type of work. Our outreach vis-a-vis the local communities requires a different type of work because the needs are different. So it's a very interesting work for us on some level, despite the fact that it comes out of a very, very severe situation, or like, as we said at the beginning, it's not nice to talk about people being harassed, but requires also the sensitivity of understanding what could be the need and how we identify and how we advocate for them. And I think that the work we are doing, the work that Iskarani and all of the volunteers of the hotline have been doing is exactly that. Like, all of the volunteers that work with the hotline are Israeli Jewish volunteers. I want to stress that because I think it is important also. It's not Christians like me knocking on the doors of monasteries and saying, hey, let's just have a coffee and let's share our difficulty. No, it's Jewish Israelis who are willing to really be active and to try to mold relationships and to increase reciprocal knowledge and to create trust. So I think this is also very important to stress. Thank
you, Feda. Hossam, I'm going to come to you in just a second, but I want to stay here for one moment. Along the list of questions is there any glimmer of light in this report? And I identified the fact that the process of creating the report and creating relationships with people in the churches seems to have been letting the Christian community feel to some extent that there is a Jewish community or elements of a Jewish community which has their back, that they are not alone, that they have support. And that's certainly a big glimmer of light. Is there any other positive glimmer that you could point out?
I think I've mentioned a couple at the end. I think there's more awareness from authorities, from the police to collaborate on that. I mean, the interest, every time that I meet with group, and I meet with thousands of people every year, all the students, all the people I teach always say, yeah, it's so important. We want to be involved. And as we said, people understand it's a problem. It's maybe a small thing, spitting on someone, but it's very humiliating, it's inappropriate, and that's not something we want to see here.
Absolutely.
Even when much horrible things happen around us, but this is the little thing we can do now and here.
Yes. Hossam, I want to ask you to dig into what I think is probably the central issue. You mentioned the statistic that the birth rate in the Christian community is the lowest of all of Israeli society, and that it's significantly beneath the replacement rate. What was it, 1.6 births per Christian woman, which is well below 2.1. So the Christian community's future is demographically challenged to begin with. And now we have this phenomenon of emigration. Can you take us inside the head of the individual, the family, the student, the individual Christian who is deliberating and thinking about this fateful choice?
Mm-hmm. In terms of fertility rate, it's a factual one, and I believe it's stable for the last couple of years, but it's very low, and there is I cannot see that there will be any change or any increase in the fertility rate of Christian women. But it's not the only point, and it's not the one that will cause that the Christian community will shrink. Beside the low birth rate of Christian women, there is an increasing discourse, even among youth and even among Christian adults, to leave the country or to immigrate due to the combinations of political external causes or factors in the Middle East and let's say, the Israeli-Palestinian or the Israeli-Arab conflict, and also the tendency to immigrate or to leave the country also derives from internal reasons related to the political extremism and religious extremism within the state, where Christians are feeling much more marginalized, and they are becoming I don't have the it's like a hinge. It's not something that a scientific one that I will share with you, but they start to minimizing their belonging into a religious Christian community, less national identification, and might be also less civic in identification due to political reasons, to mistrust and to polarization between Jews and Arabs within the state. So the combination of external and internal factors are key factors of increasing the tendency and the discourse within the Christian community of leaving the country. I don't have the exact numbers of people who already immigrated, and I tried to get those percentages, but I didn't manage. But at least in the terms of perception and tendency to immigrate, it's increasing. The discourse is increasing, and unfortunately, maybe this tendency or perceived idea that leaving the country is better for us in order to have let's say, economic opportunities to escape violence, it's just increasing, unfortunately, unless something at and the macro level is done to convince Christians and maybe others that it's better to stay in the country rather than leaving.
To stay more or less in the same topic, Hussam, you mentioned the schools, the generally separate schools to which Christian families send their children. And it's relatively well known, but maybe not all of our audience knows, that some of the very, very, very best schools in the country are these Christian schools. And so the young person who graduates from one of these schools is very well equipped to be mobile and able to leave. So with that sort of victim of your own success, could you get in a bit to the why do people stay when the situation is so difficult, on the one hand, but then on the other hand, there are issues in Arab society, not specifically Christian Arab society, but there are great challenges to the fabric of Arab society in Israel in recent years in particular. And so we have other forces that are acting upon the community, and people are reacting. Could you address that to some extent?
Yeah, when I started my presentation, I said that in order to understand, not fully, but partially, the reality of Arabic Christian is to treat them or to recognize them as a double minority. That means that they are also a minority, a religious minority within their own national minority as Arabs or Palestinians. The Christians in Israel, they are only 8% of the total Arab population, which is mostly mostly Muslims. I believe also there is a lot of challenges within the Arab or Palestinian community within Israel, but it's not only related. We cannot detach, we cannot separate the reality of the Arab population in Israel and to tackle it as a separatable issue. It should be analyzed as part of the total Israeli policy, discrimination, inequality, and other things that might also not only affect Christians, but also different Palestinian communities within Israel. So it's not, it's the policy, Israeli policy, and the, let's say, the problems within the Arab community, they are influencing Christians. It's sure they are influencing Christians, but I believe that they are also influencing other communities or other parts of other communities like Muslims or others. So it's a bit complicated. It's not bit. It's a very complicated reality, and I have also maybe some suggestion. I'm not if that part of Christians, from my personal, discussions and and conversation with other Christians, a lot of Christians feel that they are also part of the wider Christian Western world, and because of that, they feel that that as a Christians, it's much easier for them to be integrated with those societies because of religious belonging. So it's maybe another factor, that increase or encourage people to think of immigrating and maybe eventually to immigrate. So it's a combination of reasons that might, let's say, facilitate more for Christians to immigrate than other communities, other than I'm speaking about Arab communities or religious Arab communities. But it's only a guess.
Well, maybe a follow-up survey will be able to dig deeper into that in 2 or 5 years or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect time for me to ask another question that's come up. What changes could take place in the coming time frame that would give us different results when the survey is repeated in the year 2030? What would it take?
I would start and say, since I think when Daniel Rossing established the organization 21 years ago and I joined 20 years ago, the idea was that with education and dialogue, we as the Jewish majority would be able to help the Christians to stay, that they're accepted in their home. And here I think the educational work that we do in different framework, in different projects, learning about Christian, I saw in the chat a question why Jews should care, should be involved and care about the Christians here. And I would say, as an Israeli Jew who grew up here and lived here all my life, I never had the experience of being a minority. And I guess for some people in the group here in the webinar, they have this experience. But I was always part of the majority, and I feel responsible for the minorities. And when I meet with students and when we do in our project, we educate about the Christian and create more awareness to who are they. I mean, most Israelis, what do they know about Christians? They think that they're probably Muslim who converted to Islam, or Christian who came from Europe. Just, ask, the basic question, in what language do local Christians pray? So maybe 20 years ago, the answer had to be Arabic. Today, I would say there are also many communities praying Tagalog and Konkani and Malayalam and English and Hebrew. Today, the picture is more diverse. But just to be aware, who are the local Christians, to realize that in the city of Beersheba, there are a couple of churches, Catholic and Orthodox and evangelical, to know what are the challenges. So just to be aware, and that's something that Israelis have no idea. And I think by education, by encounter, bringing people together, having open conversation, we can improve the situation. We're doing that for 20 years, and there's still a lot of work to be done in order to achieve our goals as living in shared society.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'm certain that you represented Daniel faithfully.
Hi,
We're
good evening. I
heading.
would like to say something. This is Johnny. My camera is not working. So I think it's what we can see in the 2030. I think the agenda of the state, the government of Israel, to the Christians, and also unity of the Christians working together, not in split. Okay? And if you can review the history of the Christian, you are talking always about the minorities of the Christianity in Jerusalem or in Israel or in the Holy Land. But if you can review through the years, then the Christian was minorities always in Jerusalem. Even through the Ottomans, the best era for the Christian was from 1830 to 1839. Okay, so if we are looking now, we are speaking a lot of against the government, against the state, but nobody mentioned the benefits of the Christian that they have in this time in the state of Israel. Nobody say that. Okay, so there is a lot of benefits for the Christian who living in Israel. Also, as Israeli police, Christian minority, according to what some of you say, that I think that if we are speaking different languages, different religions as Christians, and also our national identity, some of them are Palestinians, some of them said, I'm a Christian, I'm not Israelis, and some of them, they will say, I'm Israelis, okay? So always you are in dilemma. Always you should protect your loyalty to the Judaism or to the Israelis or to the Islam. If you are living in north of Israel or you are living in Tel Aviv, two different identities. If you are living in Jerusalem, it's totally different. And the threat and the dilemmas and the challenges that the Christians are facing here, not only from the Jewish, it's also from the Muslims and also from the churches, by the way. I will not speak anything about the churches, even I have a lot what to say. Frederica is laughing on that. Okay, so also increasing trust between Christian communities and state of Israel, it's an important factor. You can see in all state institution or offices, there is no Christians. Non-Christian are dealing with Christianity. It's very important to understand the mentality, to understand the culture, to understand the religious. I went last time to the immigration office. I explained to them the difference between the Christian domination. They didn't know anything. If you can see the advisor in different offices, they don't know anything about Christianity. I'm advisor for minorities at Jerusalem Police. Okay, this is the only position I think in the state that is dealing with minorities that understand the Arabs, Muslims, and the Arabs who are Christians. But the different offices, there is no one. Christian communities must unite to lead change. Otherwise, will be our situation as a Christian is the same. And I think the most important, the state treatment to the Christian is the barometer of its power to the Christian world. It's very important.
I
Thank
lived
you,
in
Johnny.
Jerusalem 54 years. I lived in the old city. I lived in the new city. I lived with Arabs. I lived with Israelis. I'm very happy, very grateful. And it's just something that gives me life. And having done that, when I pray, I am a Christian. Christian and also religious. Some of the Sisters of Our Lady of Zion. Okay? And I feel also, even when I hear the news and all that, but I carry both in my prayer in a very positive way. And I have a definite time when I do that. Actually, I have something, actually a tablet, a medication that I took when I was in Israel. I still take it. When I take it, peace. Be all over the place and with both peoples. So that's a great joy for me. And I never found it difficult. I taught the Muslim girls because, as you may know, in Jerusalem, it's much more the custom that Christians go to Christian schools. So I taught in a state school for the Muslims. And I mean, not the little ones, big ones. And I used to have about 43 in each class, beginning 8 o'clock in the morning, finishing at 4 in the evening.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for your recollections, and thank you for being with us this evening.
I just felt I had to listen to this.
We're glad you were here. Very glad you were here.
Especially Hannah, seeing Hannah, whom I
We're-
know from a long, long time.
Good to see you, sister.
We're coming up on the hour and a half mark, so it's time to head towards conclusion. The last question I'm going to pose here is one of how can Christians and non-Christians outside the state of Israel help the situation? Other than donating to the Rossing Center and supporting our work, which goes without saying, but are there other things that people outside the Holy Land can do to be supportive of the Christian community and to make a positive contribution? A last word from each of the three of you. Feda, Hussam, Hannah.
So I would start and say that I think by following and maybe to quote Sister Carmen, to keep not just, you know, as a Christian say, keep the Jews and the Muslim in your prayers, but to keep all of us in our prayers and to keep the Holy Land in your prayers, because I always said that this is maybe I live in Jerusalem and I pay the taxes here and I go to sleep in my apartment in Jerusalem, but this is not my city, it's everyone's city. And everyone should feel connected to the city and care about the city and the Holy Land in general. So to follow what's happening here, to be involved, to do advocacy for different organizations and activists who try to make this place a better place. There are many problems. We're not trying to deal with all of them. There are plenty of organizations who work on other issues. We're not dealing of the impact of Muslim or on Christian life or Christian and Muslim life or the political situation. We have our own little scope of work, and we invite you to follow it and to do advocacy and to pay attention and to come whenever it will be possible to come and to see and to talk about what's happening in the Holy Land, because it's again, it's not just few people who care about a small minority, but I think it's everyone's city. If there won't be peace in Jerusalem, there won't be peace anywhere else. So we have to work for that together. And I encourage you to join us in this mission.
Any last word, Hussam or Feda?
Really, last word. you know, I believe that, as Hannah said, the people abroad, they have a message to convey. They have an advocacy work to do abroad. But I believe that internally is the big, you know, the big stones, if I use the right word, are here. So there is a lot of work to do internally as communities, as Jews, as Muslims, as Christians. All the interreligious work is very important, but it is also combined and interweaved with the political change that might change perceptions and change reality and change the future horizons, so people can stay and live with hope.
I will
Thank you, Hassan.
I will just segue to what Hussam just said. I think a big role is to help us not to be even more polarized. Please keep looking at what happens here, but don't take a side. Try to have a comprehensive view. Keep these sides together, starting with the churches, because I think that what Johnny said before is really important. Like, I will quote what Father David Neuhaus said the other day when we presented at the briefing. He said, Christians need to unify, not in just speaking about what is happening, what is the reality, but we need to work together to imagine what we want this place to be. And I think that Christians who live outside can help us in this work, because sometimes we can be overwhelmed. It's a very dark time. We really need to choose to look for hope. There isn't so much hope at this time happening here. We need to choose it every day. So I think that it's really important that people outside try not to help the polarization, but to help us stay, you know, as a whole. As Hannah was saying, this is a city of everyone. So help us keeping it that way without choosing one community, one identity of the church or the Jewish community or the Muslim community. We are here to be together. So help us do that.
Thank you, Feda. Thank you, everyone. Hannah said it. I will just repeat it in a word, in a sentence. The question was asked, why is this important to the Jewish state? And I couldn't say more strongly that it is the essence of statehood. It is the essence of being a majority to take responsibility for society. And that's what it means to be the majority with the Christian minority amongst us. That's why the Jews of the Jewish state have to do this. And on that note is the perfect moment, having already wished Eid Mubarak for Eid al-Fitr. I'd like to wish a Chag Kasher v'Sameach to our Jewish participants and a blessed Easter to those who will be celebrating Easter in a couple of weeks. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in our future webinars, and we appreciate your support here and for all of our work. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Thank you.